Hi, everyone. Welcome to this episode of Claims Never Sleep. I am joined by Laura today. Laura, it is your first podcast. Welcome.
Thank you. It is my first.
So,
Yeah.
yes, and I think you're going to live to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy. I'm so happy to have you on. And I reached out to have you join me for this episode because today we have on Michelle Ferrofino, and she's in Florida, so obviously I go to my partners in Florida whenever we're talking about anything that's Florida adjacent and specific. Yeah. But she's here to talk about. She works for a company that deals with non-standard coverage for motor vehicle claims, which is interesting in of its own, and then you just put that in Florida and it's a whole new animal. And I figured you could talk much more intelligently than I about the current litigation landscape in the great state of Florida. So with that, I thought it would be great to have you come on and join us. So with that, let's bring her in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.
Good morning, Michelle. Welcome to this episode, Claims Never Sleep. I'm so happy to have you.
Good morning. I'm so happy to be here. It's such a pleasure to have this conversation with you guys.
Yeah, same here. And you and I talked a few weeks ago, and we really hit it off. At least I felt.
Oh my God, yeah.
So if you don't feel that way, just don't tell me right now. It might hurt my feelings. But no, I felt like we totally hit it off. We could talk on the phone forever. So I'm really excited to sit down with you today and talk about claims and life in general. But
we did hit it off, and I have to agree that it was a great conversation. It just flowed so easily.
I agree. And then I wanted Laura to come on because she hasn't joined me as a co-host yet on the podcast. And, she's in Florida, you're in Florida, and we're going to talk about some Florida things that Laura can speak more intelligently about the, litigating and defending claims in Florida and the general landscape there better than I can because it is its own animal.
Nobody does Florida like Florida.
Laura's going to try. Good morning, Michelle.
But what I ask everyone who comes on this podcast, who's in claims, is I'm just really interested to hear, how your claims journey began and what brought you into this profession.
It was, I needed a job in college, and I needed to, go to school at night. And I find that once you get into the insurance world, it kind of just takes a hold of you. And I kind of grew my profession as I finished college and started in customer service, just, picking up phones and taking first reports, and gradually worked my way up until a clerk position. And then I worked in the dispatch department. I did some total loss paperwork, and I was an assistant. And then a few years later, I got my license, and I was trained to be an adjuster, and just gradually grew with the company that I was at. I did some subrogation work there, property damage. Then I did a few years of PIP. And that was challenging. PIP is one of those things that, it's a busy coverage. Then I did some commercial investigations, a lot of on-scene investigations and statements for slip and falls or, product liability. I did that for 2 years. And then I went to homeowners. I did investigations for subrogation for homeowners carrier. And then I ended up back here where I am now, which is managing a liability department for a non-standard South Florida insurance company, auto insurance. So yeah, I just kind of evolved in itself. It's one of those things where, I didn't picture that this is where my life was going to be, but it is now, and it's all good.
I mean, who does really?
Right?
I didn't know I was going to go into litigation. In fact, when I graduated law school, my plan was to go into real estate transactional work, and there were no jobs. So I had to, change course. Like, Laura, you should share a little bit about your pivot. You used to be in family law, and here you are.
Yeah, I was not just in family law. I actually had my own firm that I owned with 2 other partners. We had associates underneath us. Like, we had a whole thing here in Orlando. And during the pandemic, family law just kind of shut down. So we were kind of bored. We didn't have a lot to do. And as we were working through that, I was like, this is the first vacation I've had.
Oh, wow.
Since basically I became a family law lawyer. So my best friend that I met my first day of law school has been trying to get me to move over to insurance defense for as long as I can remember. And so I finally was like, you know what? All right. So I basically gave away my third of the practice and moved over to insurance defense, and I've never looked back. I love it. I like that I do something different every day. So every day I'm doing, tomorrow I could be doing, a construction case, and the day after that I could be working on an automobile accident case. I mean, it's every day is something different, and I really, really like that. But I also really love being able to just go on vacation, unplug, and turn everything off. That's one of my favorite parts, is being able to unplug, which is, with family law, you just don't have the ability to do that. Because people are calling you and texting you on Thanksgiving and saying, I need you to draft an emergency motion right now. And I'm like, the judge isn't there. No, I'm so sorry. You're going through this. But so that was hard, setting that boundary was hard for me. I stopped giving out my cell phone number. I was like, I just don't. But you still get the emails and you just feel bad. So you end up working on Thanksgiving, and this is better for me because I don't have to set those boundaries.
Yeah. Awesome. I mean, you still need to set, I think, everyone needs to set some boundaries for yourself. Otherwise, like, work can just spill over to life. But I would agree, those types of emergencies are few and far between. I mean, of course, there's always instances that something comes up, right? But not in the same manner. I think it's what you were dealing with before.
Right. Yeah. So, like, I hardly ever work weekends now, but like when I do, it's because we're actually going to go to trial or something. We are going to actually go to trial. And we're just preparing for that, or, something big has come up, but it's not every weekend. It's just, this is better. So, but if you'd asked me in college or law school, even what I would be doing, this would have been the furthest thing from my mind. So I never would have guessed. Yeah. And in fact, I think I was trying to get into something that was going to keep me out of court as much as possible. And this isn't it, but
you went the other way.
Yeah, I sure did. Yeah.
So, and Michelle, when you mentioned that you are at a non-standard carrier. What does that mean? What does that mean in Florida? Because I think that's a different thing than I'm accustomed to. So can you enlighten us, for us non-Floridians?
Non-standard. Non-standard company means that we usually take on higher risk drivers and policyholders. So we're looking at people with, driving history, driving history, where multiple accidents, multiple tickets. So it's a higher risk policy holder. So there's more risk to assume when you're writing these insurance. So claims we have a high claims volume.
And are these personal policies?
So yes, these are personal auto. So we'll write your standard PIP and PD policies. There's comp collision on some of them, BI on some, but those are the coverages that we write.
Yeah. So it's funny because I recently actually filmed a podcast, and I think it already came out. I'm pretty sure it came out. Yes, it did. That I was talking to a woman who is at a carrier that writes like policies of last resort for commercial policies. So similar idea, but on the commercial side. And with that, we were talking a lot about how you know, there is, you know, obviously an increased risk, but also just because your policyholder has this, you know, might have not the best driving
record.
past doesn't necessarily equate to, okay, but in this instance they were negligent. And I think that, you know, that is a distinction that, you know, I think needs to be made, because it can get so easily, those past records obviously can come into play, but just because this person was the world's worst driver up at this point doesn't mean in this particular instance they did anything wrong. And it can be hard to draw that line.
100%. And I find that a lot when we're investigating claims, just because we have that, you know, our insureds are, you know, high risk, they tend to think that, oh, they're automatically at fault. This is when your investigation skills come in. Like, take a good statement from our insured and, you know, believe what they say when they tell you, I didn't run the red light. It was, you know, I didn't, a lot of these insureds also don't speak English. So it's hard to communicate with an officer who only speaks English, or, you know, I think that that's when our investigative skills have to come to play. And we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we're interviewing our insureds correctly and asking the right questions, because maybe they're not at fault. And we see that a lot with our claims.
Yeah. And I can imagine too, there could be a level of distrust, right? That, you know, maybe they're you know, at least at the beginning, maybe unwilling to 100% cooperate or feel like they are comfortable enough to do that.
Yeah, a lot of them also have never been, you know, they might have some driving, you know, issues from the past, but maybe they've never been in an accident before, or they don't speak the language, so they don't trust, or they don't know how claims really work, or how to go about filing a claim, or making sure that their damages are taken care of. So that's where I think we come in and we educate them on, this is our claims process, and this is what we need from you. And we're also here to advocate for them as well.
Yeah. So, and how do you go about it, or how do you train your team to kind of work on gaining that trust, so you can get that cooperation, because you need the cooperation to do your job.
Yeah, we especially in litigation, like, they are a witness. We cannot do anything without our driver, our insured. They're the policyholder. Honestly, what I've done in the past myself, and what I train my staff to do, is you pick up the phone, and the first thing you want to show is empathy. You want to try to explain to them, to the best of your ability, the claims process, but also in a way where they're going to understand where you're coming from. So you want to use, you know, terms that they will feel comfortable with, and show a lot of empathy. And if you have to repeat yourself more than once, do so, but in a very clear way, letting them know, this is the claims process, this is what we need from you, these are your responsibilities, because they have responsibilities as policyholders as well, you know, to advise us if they got served with a lawsuit, or, you know, provide us with financial affidavits should we need one. So letting them know that we're here to help them, here to assist them, and also here to protect them. We're here to defend them should we need to.
Yes. So what are, and this is where I'm going to tap into some of the Florida stuff. So, you know, what are some Florida specific challenges that you have with, you know, defending these claims?
A lot of our challenges comes from insured cooperation, and getting, at least in my experience right now, what we're dealing with, it's really getting ahead of the insured being served. So we want to obviously try to settle the claim with the carrier and avoid any litigation. We want to protect our insured from ever being served with a lawsuit. If we can't, and they do file a lawsuit, it's getting the insured to cooperate after they've been served, because we need them, and letting us and giving us notice that they've been served. A lot of the times we're going into the clerk of courts and finding these suits ourselves. And then I think that's where the challenge comes, with contacting the insured and letting them know, while we're here to defend you, we need your cooperation. We need to know when you're served these lawsuits, if the driver is not our insured, we need their cooperation as well. So a lot of it is communication. So we have been trying to get one ahead of the lawsuit. We want to settle the claim directly with the carrier before it gets to litigation. And if it doesn't, then we're sending a lot of communication to the insured, both in English and in Spanish, letting them know if you get served with a lawsuit, we need you to call us. We need you to call us and talk to us. We don't want them necessarily talking to the adverse carrier or opposing counsel and giving all, either settling the claim before we can, or it's a lot of the communication is what is our biggest challenge. And we're trying to be proactive in the way that we're handling our claims. So we want to get ahead of it. We want the insured to know to contact us and not anyone else. It's something that we've been changing, and hopefully we're trending in the right direction by being proactive with the communication to our insured.
Yeah. And I imagine that is such a big challenge though too, because if they're not accustomed to it, like we are, like we know, like, oh yeah, these are just the steps, but the average person probably is not, and they might panic or they might be confused in who their carrier is. Like I feel
a lot of
yeah.
Oh, you know what it is too, I find challenging? We're return mail, or just we have the wrong phone number. We have no contact information. A lot of our insureds, haven't been in our country for too long. So they're not, they're either moving around or it's being proactive in the way where we're running to make sure that we have the latest address. We're making contact with the agent. Have you seen this person? Is this their address? Is this their phone number? That's something else that we've been trying to work on to make sure that not only are we communicating with them, but we're reaching them where they are, that these letters are going to get to them, these emails, that they're not going to just disregard them, that they're coming to them in the language that they understand. It's just, you have to get creative in the way that you reach out to your insurance.
I can't tell you how many times I've struggled with just getting contact information for the actual client, just trying to get a hold of them. I've got an answer that's due. I really don't want to file it without talking to them first. I just want to hear their side of the story, but I got to get a hold of them first. And now, we get into situations where we're hiring private investigators because we can't find this person. So it's hard.
Yeah.
I definitely, having the correct contact information for your client is definitely, it's a step in the right direction, because it's virtually, it's impossible to move on from that.
Yeah.
So,
and how do you, when you have difficulty though with cooperation from your insurance, like what are some of the steps you take to kind of gain that cooperation and that trust? Because it can be hard to break through.
I know that Laura mentions hiring private investigators, but we have an SIU team. So we used to do a lot of door knocking before. We used to send someone, one of our investigators, to knock on the door, and you wouldn't believe the difference that it makes when somebody goes to your door speaking Spanish to try to help you. You would get more from knocking on somebody's door and just for them to see a face and explain the same thing that maybe somebody told them on the phone, but they feel more comfortable if they're speaking Spanish, or if they see, oh yeah, he's wearing a shirt that says, the name of the company, and he gave me a business card. In extreme cases that we really can't, we have to get creative in ways like that. So we're, knocking on doors and trying to find other avenues to make them, one, feel comfortable, and two, cooperate, because that's what we want. We want to build trust too. We want them to also know that we're trying to help them in the long run. So that's another creative measure that we've used in the past. It's actually putting a face to the company,
and like a friendly face, not like, because I do feel like there could be there's just a level of distrust me, like, well, what do they really want from me? Are they really out to help me?
I'm sorry I cut you off, but I was going to say it's you can get more from kindness than you can from being passive aggressive when you're dealing with someone. So if you're like, oh, I just need you to help us, or I need you to help me, can you help me, or can you point me in the right direction? Is this what happened? Is this what we have? This is this how things really happen? Like, can you tell me your side of the story? We just want to understand so we can make the right decision. Because if they are liable, we're responsible to pay for anything that we're liable for. So I find that asking little things like that, can you help me? Can you point me in the right direction? Is this really what happened? It makes a lot of difference how you approach a situation and someone to try to get information from them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's worked for me in the past.
And so, and I can totally see like how and why, but I can also see like the pushback or the
Yeah.
resistance that you might get. So tell me about this. So I imagine you have you manage a team, right?
Yeah, it's a team of, right now we have 8 adjusters and 2 supervisors.
Okay.
We just hired 3 new adjusters, so we're doing the training process and redistributing files. So it's a little bit of a growing pain when you have so many new hires at the same time. So pendings tend to get a little bit backed up while you're training everyone else to redistribute files. But yes.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit of that too, because you and I did talk about this a bit, the volume, right? And managing the volume and the challenges that come with it. And as you know, Laura was saying, oh, like work-life balance. I'm so glad I moved to litigation so I have more time. But in claims, you can let it get away from you too, like in the sense that there's never an end, right? It's not like you're reach the end of your pending today.
You close 10 and you get 12.
Right.
It's one of those things. But yeah, I think the level of the volume of claims is one of the things that we've not struggled, but that's one of our greatest challenges. It's making sure that we're keeping these pendings where they need to be. When I got to the department, I saw a need for additional staff. So I created, additional positions. In my experience, if you want an adjuster to do their job well, you have to give them a managing pending, because you can do all the training you want and you can give them all the tools, but if the work is overwhelming, there's only so much they can do. So I created, additional positions in order to even out the pendings at a lower number. Another thing that we did was we identified our strongest adjusters and we gave them specific claims that we thought they could handle better, which was files that we knew were going to end up in litigation, in order for them to be proactive and try to settle them with the opposing counsel before. It's building relationships with other insurance companies. Instead of them filing a lawsuit, they're going to call you or they're going to email you, hey, we need to settle this claim. So we've done that with 2. We did it with 1 adjuster. We're trying it with another adjuster with another carrier. It's building those relationships with the other carrier so that they know that instead of, they can just call you or email you and you'll settle the claim instead of, filing a suit. So that's those are some of the things that I've done in the department, I think, to create a more manageable pending and kind of to be proactive in avoiding litigation or, just a better claims handling procedure.
Yeah. And I mean, it is good though to put like the power in your adjuster's hands though too, yes, you can negotiate this claim, like you can close this file, like it and you got this, it's kind of like
it's all about positive. And motivating them, like you can do this. I just need to give you the tools for you to be able to do it. But absolutely, and I'm such an advocate for positive reinforcement and just building people up. We want them to grow. We want them to evolve professionally. We want them to grow and learn as much as possible. I want them to eventually move on to other great departments and do other great things. So 100%.
Yeah. So having said all that, like what are some of the things you are looking for when you're looking to expand your team? Like what qualities are you looking in your adjusters?
That's such a great question. I think that I look for someone who's open-minded, and I don't necessarily want them to have handled this specific department before, but someone that's able to determine liability, can identify comparative negligence, can list, what evidence they would be looking for to apply comparative negligence. Also, somebody who can communicate, well, in the way that their liability investigation would start, middle, and I guess the flow of their investigation. I asked them to kind of just go through an accident, and I give them a scenario, and I ask them, what would you do in this situation? Like, is there comparative negligence in this left-hand turn, and how would you what items do you see, or what evidence would you need to prove your liability, or what evidence do you think that we need from the insured? Anything that I can see that they're thinking proactively on how to determine their liability.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that.
And have you found? I mean, because I imagine though, like a lot of times with those sorts of things, it's like, oh well, that's I think for new adjusters. Oh, we need a lawyer to decide that. No, you don't.
Oh, you know what we actually did as well? We had our team meet with our attorneys, and our attorneys, gave them like pointers, like, yes, I am an attorney. I am, but you can do this too. There's, we went through a list of everything that's admissible in court and not admissible in court. What really are our strengths in these cases, and what they can use, because it is the same tactics that our attorneys use. They're just sometimes we wanted to just create that. We wanted to create how do you say? I guess make our attorneys more approachable, or not. The attorneys in the office, we don't bother. No, like come to the attorneys with these questions in order for you to handle it. 100%, absolutely. We wanted to create the connection between our adjusters and attorneys. So now we have these adjusters emailing our attorneys directly, like, oh, this is the case. What's your opinion? Or, absolutely, they can do this too. They can negotiate these settlements. A police report isn't admissible in court. So when they tell you that, don't necessarily believe everything that the other side is telling you. They just, we have trainings and things that sharpen their negotiation skills. We want to give them all these tools so that they can negotiate these claims themselves.
And I think that's like great, and I think most companies are doing that, because everyone realizes, like, you want to get this stuff negotiated up front, because as soon as it goes into litigation, your costs are going way up. And especially if you're talking high volume type claims, you want to eliminate as much as possible before litigation is filed. But what about at that point when the case is filed, it is in litigation? Now the game has changed a little bit, and you are looking to either hire outside counsel, or do you have in-house counsel that handle certain claims?
We have in-house counsel, and even at the point where we get a lawsuit, I can tell you that a few of my adjusters have reached out to opposing counsel, and if it's something that maybe we just missed and we were going to pay anyway, they just settle it, and then they'll just ask for the dismissal and then monitor it to make sure that we get it. Obviously, there are the cases that they assign to our litigation department, and we do have in-house counsel. But I even want them to know how to be able to settle something in litigation. If it's something that we're liable for and we're going to pay it, just call the attorney and listen, you filed this lawsuit, but here's my release. I'm willing to pay you. Just send me a dismissal. We want them to know civil procedure as well, because that's good to know. It's more knowledge for them to be able to. So I have an adjuster that it depends on the cases, but she'll actually reach out to opposing counsel and try to settle the claim herself. And then I'm like, okay, well, make sure you get a dismissal. they need to send you a copy of the dismissal, just monitor it for 30 days. But at least now she knows what happens after a lawsuit is filed. So
Yes.
just giving them those little, and that encourages them and, builds confidence, because now you've settled a claim with a suit. That's impressive,
Yeah.
And I think building confidence is it's important when negotiating, because picking up the phone and talking to an attorney that, if you have no experience, like, it can be intimidating, but once you get the hang of it, like, it's second nature. You can just pick up and realize, hey, they're just like me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I mean, I probably shouldn't say this, but there are times that when I get on the phone with like the attorney who's been practicing a long time, if they say something, I'm like, maybe they're right. Even if I know I'm right, and like sometimes I'm like,
I know. I think that is just
like I like doubt myself.
Yeah, of course, because we all have, this little voice inside our head. It's like, maybe they are right. They've been doing it longer. They know more. But we have to, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. It just, just because you've been doing it for so long, they can be wrong too.
Yeah.
Right. Or like, there's also
You
more
can
than one way to
challenge
do
them.
And I also, like, if one thing litigation has taught me is there's multiple sides to the coin, and people see it so many different ways. I mean, it's not even like when you're talking about value. One of my favorite activities is evaluating a case and then going to the person next to me and have them tell me what they think it's worth, and it's always wildly different.
Always, because it's about perception. It's what you, and it could be different for everyone. I can see something and I can read something and see something completely different than you, or it's all about perception. That's why I think evidence is so important, and the cooperation from our insured is key.
So let's talk a little bit about Florida, though, right? Like, so one thing I ask a lot of people when I have them on the podcast, and we start talking about venues and things like that, Florida always comes up. Like, it's like Florida and Texas, Alabama, New York, like California, worst places to be. But both of you sit there and are handling Florida litigated claims and not litigated claims every day. So what's happening? Like, why is Florida such a bad place to be? And I know it's a loaded question. I've touched on it in other podcasts, but I'm curious to hear your guys' take.
Laura, let you
Yeah,
take
that's
this first.
Good question. That's a good question. You gonna let me tell? I honestly,
go ahead.
So I think part of it is that Morgan & Morgan started here, and they've become such a force, and their ideas and their, we don't back down, stand, and they really have driven up what people are expecting for settlements. And like, you drive around Florida and you see these billboards, like, the Dan Newland ones. Oh, Dan got me $1 million. And they're so misleading. And I really think that they should be illegal, but they're not.
Should be fact checked.
Because they're, oh, Dan got me $1 million. And I'm like, okay, but how much did you see? Because you had to pay your lawyer, had to pay your doctors. And it's how much did you get at the end of the day? Because I don't think that it's nearly as much as what's on that billboard. And so I think that's part of the problem. And the other part is people, I think, because of those ads and because of what they see on TV, they expect that when they are in an accident, something's happened to them, that this is the lottery for them. And that, oh, I'm going to be rich after this. That's it. I'm going to be rich. And that's it's funny, when I first started doing this job, even my dad was like, oh, you work for the bad guys. And I'm like, no. I'm just trying to keep people honest. I'm trying to help people understand that this is not the lottery that they've won. This is, something bad happened to them, and you will be compensated for that. But, there is a line, it's got to be reasonable. And that's I think the hardest part in Florida is that we've gotten to this place in litigation where things are just not reasonable anymore, especially with juries. And I think that's something that companies are now a little shy to actually go to trial on cases because of, what's been going on with juries here. It's like common sense has just gone out the window, and it's just everybody's like, especially if you have if you've got a corporate defendant, they just like, down with corporations. Let's just, pay this person, it's the lottery. Let's give them as much as we can. And that's unfortunate, because that's not the way it's supposed to be. I don't think that anybody wanted that when this whole thing started, and it's become more about how much can the attorney make and how much can the law firm say that they got, and I don't think that that's helping. It's hurting the entire legal system in Florida.
Yeah.
I also feel like it hurts the consumer on the back end.
It does.
Rates continue to skyrocket, and I think that and attorneys are never going to tell their client, hey, your rates might go up after this. Or
oh, no.
It's I think that they're just being misled in so many ways. Yes, with the $1 million settlement, but in the back end, like, it hurts everywhere. It's collectively hurting the state, because insurance rates are through the roof, and it's because of claims. And I don't think that people understand that. I think that they are like, oh, I have a roof leak. Maybe I can get a whole new roof.
Yes.
Or it's like, someone hit my car, so maybe I could just get 4 new tires while I'm at it. It's the misleading of, you have insurance, and it's putting you back in the place where you were before the accident.
Right.
Your house is going to be in the condition that it was before the water leak. It's not going to be better. It's going to be where it was. If you need a new roof, that's your responsibility. And they sell this dream to someone who is not educated in insurance. And if someone comes to you and tells you, I can get you a new roof, I just need your insurance information, with people not being educated and thinking the insurance, that's the big bag company. They have all the money in the world. They believe them, and they're just misled, and a lack of education, from insurance, and being sold a false dream. Because at the end of the day, your rates are going to go up. It's, look at where we are with homeowners. It's almost impossible to find a reasonable premium nowadays in South Florida. Companies don't want to write here. And I think
it's Orlando too. It's impossible to find a decent rate even in Orlando. And we're, usually pretty protected from hurricanes, but doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yeah,
we're still
at this
in the
point,
state,
I think it's across the state. I think it's everyone. And then we see that also in our personal lives. So, our rates are
say
going up.
that you're pretty protected from hurricanes, but I feel like Orlando.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, I can see that.
There you are. Megan,
Yeah.
you froze for a second. I didn't hear your question.
An internet glitch happening. Like everyone, it was paused. I was talking, everyone was talking at once. What I was saying though is, I mean, you say that like Orlando's pretty protected from hurricanes, although like I feel like the last few hurricanes, like Disney World is shut down, so you might be on still readily affected, and you're still your property loss.
Yeah, so I think like the last really scary one was the I always call it the wrong name. It's the one that just dumped a bunch of water on us, and I think it really kind of opened up the eyes of everybody in Orlando, because we're like, we weren't ready for all of this rain. So I feel like we've been under construction since, I think that was like 2 years ago, and it's been like constant construction at, all the streets. They're putting in new pipes because that one hurricane. So that we had a little bit flooding with that. But really, I mean, we've gotten very lucky in Orlando. I think there was the last one that actually did come right through Orlando, and we still got very lucky. So if it could be hit or miss. We got a million years ago when Charlie hit us. We got mangled because I lived here then. That was my first hurricane, actually. I just moved. Yeah, I think it was like 2006.
You never forget your first hurricane.
No, I moved here in 99, but I think we just got lucky for like 5 or 6 years. And so when Charlie hit, that was my first hurricane, and it hit on my birthday. And I was like, this is great. And we didn't have power for 2 weeks. So, we can get hit. It has happened, and it'll happen again. We just, try to be more prepared than we were the last time, which is hard when we get really hit so infrequently. But whenever anybody in the state gets hit, everything skyrockets. And, people do try to take advantage, and that's unfortunate. I think that's something that really hurts the insurance industry, is when people take advantage. They're like, well, there was a hurricane, didn't hit me. It was really in South Florida, but I want a new roof. So you see a lot of that as well.
And I think for the most, I think all of Florida at one point, we are surrounded by water. No one, I think no one is safe. There's always a chance. There's always a chance that it can happen. I think South Florida has been really lucky. I think we haven't had a direct hit, and Don't even say it. Don't even say it. No. I don't even think it. Out there in the universe. I don't even want to say it. I'm just gonna say that we've been very lucky. But yeah, it's one of those things where no one, eventually something can happen somewhere. So,
and I'm I have family in Florida. My dad lives in Satellite Beach. My mom lives in Vero Beach. I'm always worried about them. My dad never leaves. He's on one of the barrier islands. He refuses to ever leave. He always stays in the house. And then I'm like, how'd you do? And he's like, well, my roof was ripped off. And I'm like, God, again? Why do you stay there? But he doesn't want to leave. He's one of those people. So I don't think he ever has. I get scared for them, but then helping my dad navigate through things that I feel like he taught me better. And now I'm like, we're in this stage now where he's like, oh, this guy came to my house because my roof was gone. This literally happened 5 or 6 years ago. And he's like, so somebody came to his door because he didn't have a roof. And they're like, oh, we can give you a new one. We'll put a new roof on your house, and we'll go through the insurance and everything. And he's like, okay, gave him his insurance information, never saw them again. They didn't even put tarps. And I'm like, why? Did you look them up?
He gave his insurance information?
Yep. And he's like, I'm like, Dad, did you look him up on the Better Business Bureau? No. Dad, did you, get a business card? Do you even know? No. And I'm like, you need to call your insurance company and find out if they got a call.
They filed a claim.
Yeah. Because it's possible that they didn't do that. Well, they did. And so, cleaning that up and fixing that, because I'm the daughter that went to law school.
Right.
So when another thing, he was having his kitchen redone, and people stopped showing up, and telling him, oh, we lost the marble, so you're out of luck. And then I'm writing letters, demand letters for my dad. It's adorable, but I'm also like, when did you forget how things work, and that everybody's trying to scam you? You taught me that. So that's always hard. But trying to watch out for my parents who are now getting up there and trying to make sure that they're going to be safe in a hurricane, not just me. And they're hours away, so I'm like, I don't really have room, but if you need to stay somewhere, they wouldn't though. So. But it's just hard. It's another thing. Living in Florida is super fun.
So we have it at work, and then we also have it in our personal lives. We're trying to figure out not only, these claims, but then you have your parents and you're trying to help them with their stuff. It's kind of, it's everywhere. We get it from both sides. Yeah.
I'm sure, Michelle, I'm sure everybody asks you insurance questions.
Oh no. Yeah. And my sister's also an attorney. So if I don't know, I'm calling her. I'm like, hey, can you read this for me? Does this sound what does it sound like?
What does this mean?
Yeah. And she'll she does the same thing for my parents. If anything happens, if they get any type of letter that they don't understand, they're just calling my sister. We need you to figure this out for us.
That's funny because my whole family does that with me too. And I'm like, you're going to have to email it to me. I can't, I have to read it, because if you're just talking to me, it's not going to, it's in one ear and out the other. So you need to send it to me. So, yeah.
Well, it's funny. My mom has a place on the Gulf Coast. So she was affected by the 2 hurricanes earlier this year and doesn't spend her whole year down there, which is fortunate. So we didn't have she didn't have to evacuate. But on the flip side, we had the problem is that she's not down there full time. So then after, the storm surge went through, she can't get to her place.
Right.
And then she's relying on, it's like a community, it's like a 55 and older community. And then she's relying on, okay, the community says they have their, the insurance, the remediation company hired by their homeowner, like the condo association, remediation companies coming out, and we have to rely on them to make it to her place. And so then when she's not there, like all the other 55 and older people who are there and knocking on the door at the trailer, the parking lot, like, hey, did you go to unit 602 or whatever it is? She's not there to do that. So then her place didn't get looked at right away. So then I was like, okay, now we need to hire our own company to come in, because at that point, then we had a second hurricane hit right after. So like, which, you can't control it. Again, Barrier Island, everyone has to get off. So eventually I had, as soon as we could, we had another company come in. And at that point, the mold it'd been 2 weeks since the first storm. So, and then I'm helping her navigate all the, and submitting the claims. And then of course it's just like talking to her. She's talking about the remediation company as if they're the insurance company. I'm like, no, Mom, that's not the insurance company. Like trying to explain the process. And I'm like, can I, but she's not used to it. And to her, it's not it's just not her normal language. And I imagine if she's confused, so is everyone else there.
And when I did homeowners, and I just did the investigation portion for subrogation, but so many people don't even know that the remediation company comes, they dry out, but they're not fixing anything else. No, they might they might do the drywall, if that.
Probably
but
not.
You need to not. You need to hire a contractor to come repair your house.
Right. So after they poke all the holes in it, you gotta have somebody else come.
Put the dryers. It's like a process. So it's like one thing to dry out the property, another thing to repair the property. Nobody knows that.
Nobody tells them.
So you have one, we paid your EMS bill, but now we need to pay your damages. It's so much information that goes into, especially homeowners, especially with hurricanes. It can get so complicated. And there's so many little things that nobody knows. Like, you really do have to get your ducks in a row and make sure that you have the right companies coming in at the right time, because the contractor can't do anything until the property is dry. So the EMS has to be first. But nobody tells us. Nobody tells them
that. Right. Yeah.
It's all about.
Everybody thinks they have flood insurance, but hardly anybody.
No one does.
I always recommend, like, to my friends, and I'm like, I don't care if you don't live in a flood zone.
Area, right.
Always have flood insurance. We live in Florida. It does not matter. If your house is flooded, because of a hurricane, you need to file a flood insurance, because your homeowners probably doesn't have flood insurance. Right. It does not cover it. If your roof is taken out by a tornado, then that's a hurricane claim. But if it's a flood, you need flood insurance.
Yeah, and nobody knows.
Nobody knows. I always just get it. It's a couple $100 a year. It's the best. I'd rather over-insure than under-insure.
Yeah, unless you're on a barrier island, then it's not a couple $100 a year.
No, right? Yeah, I'm talking about me. I live inland. I am speaking of my own experience.
Yes.
If you're in South Beach somewhere, maybe not so much.
Well, I'm digressing, but I talked about this recently on another podcast. But when I was watching on like TikTok during this last hurricane, the people riding it out in their high rises, and I was like, I know you're on the 10th floor, but this does not seem like a good idea.
Oh yeah. In Tampa, people. I was like, what are you doing? You know better than this. We all should know better.
I remember I lived in downtown Miami way 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and when it would rain, I couldn't all I saw was clouds.
Yeah.
And I was like, I would never stay here for a storm. I'm creeped out right now, and it's just rain outside. So I can imagine going through a named storm in a high rise or even above the third floor. I would not do it. Those
No,
tickets
just
are
because
very
you're up
scared.
high doesn't mean that you're safe from a hurricane.
Absolutely not. Winds come higher, if anything, up there.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then the power goes out, and how are you getting down? You're taking
Oh
the
my gosh.
steps. Oh
You
wait, and
take
now
the
your
stairs.
lobby's flooded.
Yeah,
Like how?
no, they're taking the stairs. I
Yeah,
know these.
I know where you got down and where are you going, because now everything around you flooded. Now you're stuck and your car's flooded, so you can't get out.
I'll just leave. I always say if it's above
Not
a
thinking it
4,
through.
I'll leave. I don't care. I'll leave everything behind. There is nothing that's more valuable than my life and the life of my children. I'll leave. I don't care. I'll leave everything behind.
So and it's when I want to just backtrack a little bit, because I thought of this when we were talking about Morgan & Morgan, who they've made it up here in the Northeast as well.
Oh, they have?
Oh,
but
God, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, they are?
Yeah.
I thought it was
I think they want to be
thing.
in all 50 states. I think that.
Oh, I mean,
I think that's where they started.
Florida's where they started.
But they leave. But they're everywhere, and I've heard. Just I feel like anyone I talk to, that's like any complaint kind of rolls back to them. But just in general, I'm in the Philadelphia area, and we see the same thing here too, with the billboards, like giving these promises of big returns, or there's one plaintiff firm here that their billboards like, we insurance companies for breakfast, like, so it's like this messaging that yeah, it's like the messaging though is that, the big bad insurance company, and I feel like that is what drives to, even like you were saying, Michelle, some of your insureds, the distrust, right? Because they're also seeing these billboards and things out there, and they're like, well, how do I know that my insurance company is going to be out for my best interest, because they're the big bad, they're the big bad insurance company. So I think it's just this messaging that's, across the board is affecting, how insurance is perceived by the general public.
I always had this idea. I'm like, can you imagine if insurance companies marketed against attorneys, how as hard as attorneys market
I know.
insurance company? Like, we should have a billboard of Morgan & Morgan, and then we should like state statute and be like right next to it, like, oh, this is really what you get. Why don't insurance companies do that? I don't know. I just think it's like a way to fight back. Like, tell them the truth. We'll show them, our own billboard and our own facts, but they spend so much money on marketing and just putting themselves out there. And it's free. Like, anywhere you go, you can get a pen with a Morgan & Morgan name on it, or they just market themselves so much, and they're just in your face about it. And when something's in your face, that's what you're going to remember.
Yeah.
They're telling you the insurance companies are bad. You see it 10 times a day. You listen to it on the radio, you watch it on TV, you're listening to a podcast, and there's a commercial about them. They're in your face so much, and it's so hard to, how do you fight that? How do you, it's one of those things. It's like, they're just doing this job of being in their face all the time, telling, misleading facts, but it works.
And unfortunately too, it's a lot of the professionalism goes out the window. So a lot of times, like when I get a new case come across my desk. What is it? One of the first things you do is you call counsel, like, what's going on here? And you kind of gauge them and like where they are with the case, and see, okay, is this one we can get resolved? Who am I working with here? And I feel like with some of those other firms, you're not going to have a very productive first phone call. It's going to be, there's not going to be any extended courtesies, like, oh, like, look, I just got this notice of this, like, can I have a 30-day extension to respond to the complaint? Nope. Whereas look, I would find most of the plaintiffs attorneys I work with are like, yeah, absolutely, like absolutely, you can have an get up to speed. Here's what I have, like this is what I have in my. But when you have a Morgan and Morgan or a firm that's emulating to be like them, I think they take the stance like, we don't give extensions, we don't provide these courtesies. It takes all this professionalism, just tosses it out the window.
Yeah, they're aggressive in the handling of their cases. This is our way or the highway. There is no concession. There is nothing. We want this and nothing. And then that makes it hard too, because these are people you're gonna have to work with often.
Yeah.
And even if you're on opposite sides, shouldn't we be able to, just common courtesy, if you need an extension,
right?
Why wouldn't you want to give it to them,
Like for instance, like right now I have this small little litigated file, and I'm, trying to talk to plaintiff's counsel to get it resolved. And, I gave him my number. He thinks my number is reasonable, but he's like, I'm just working on my client. Like but at least he's being honest with me and not trying to like blow smoke up my butt, being like, that's not a reasonable offer. He's like, no, what you're offering is reasonable. He's like, my client's just a giant pain in the butt and I have to work on him. But at least he's being honest with me about it and not, like pushing back me like, oh no, I need double that because, and he's trying to reason with, his client. I feel like that common courtesy wouldn't necessarily happen otherwise with some of these other firms we're speaking of.
Right.
And doesn't that make you want to work maybe even a little harder on your end to settle the case?
Yeah.
Give you a little common courtesy. Maybe, you give me a little, now I'm going to give you a little,
yes.
You meet in the middle somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah,
I've definitely litigated against other attorneys where I get to the end of my rope and I'm like, I don't want you to make any money and I want to go to trial now and I want to murder you in
now I'm
this
gonna make
case.
you fight for it. Now I'm gonna make you work for it.
Yeah. I've definitely been through that and it's not good for the client. I have to take a step back and, censor myself because, that's just not good business for the client. You got to get myself off of that. It's hard. I've definitely had to shut down my computer and just not respond to that email at the end of the day. I've had to do that. Like
step away.
Now's not a good time.
And then you come back to it. Yeah. It's like, I'm not going to answer this email right now.
Yeah. I had that advice given to me by like a senior partner years ago, like walked by my office and I was like banging out an email, like very angrily. And he's like, what's going on in here? And I was like, this jerk. And I'm like, and he was like, okay, you can write that email, but you are not sending it. He's like, put that in your draft folder and revisit that one tomorrow and see how angry you are tomorrow. He's like, and it was such good advice because in the moment I was so heated. I was writing a scathing reply, but it was also very therapeutic for me to write it. And I'm so glad that he walked by my office at that point and was like, all right, simmer down. Let it marinate a little bit. See how you feel about it tomorrow. And the next day,
it was like a form of therapy to write it. It was like a form of therapy for you. You write the email, you don't send it. It makes you feel better, and then you come back to it tomorrow.
Yeah, make a lot of changes.
My daughter came to me about something like that. I think she learned about it in first or second grade. It was called like Lincoln letters. I guess Abraham Lincoln used to write angry letters and not send them and just hold on them. And it's like and she was like, oh, I think I told her the story and she's like, oh, it's a Lincoln letter. I'm like, oh, what? I'm like, she's like, yeah, he used to write these very angry letters, but he just wouldn't send them out. And I was like, I guess it is a Lincoln letter. It's a Lincoln email.
Every day.
I've never heard of it being called the Lincoln letter, but I definitely know that it's a form of therapy to like write something to someone just to get it off your chest and just to get it out. But you don't have to ever tell them because it's not really about them. It's about you getting it out and feeling better because you don't want to, harbor those feelings. But I didn't know it was called the Lincoln letter, so I definitely learned it today.
I mean, according to her in first grade many years ago, that's what she told me. So
I mean, that sounds like pretty.
Do not start etching that stone.
I will take that as a reliable source. The first grade is very reliable.
I mean, on some things they are, but
oh my god, they really are. My almost 9-year-old, she will question me And when she does, I'm like, God, she's totally right. I'm like, yeah, you're right, Ella. But I don't know. And she makes me question myself, and I'm like, on the fly, trying to think of something to tell her. But they really do have a lot of common sense, these kids.
They do. Yes.
Mhm.
And like, I think some of it too is maybe it's not the overthinking doesn't happen just yet.
They just say what's on their mind. They're not worried about what you're gonna think of, what they're saying. They're just like, we should do this, or why doesn't this happen like this? I'm like, oh wow, maybe we should listen to you.
Yes. Well, Michelle, we are just about out of time, which this went by so fast. So I was like, wait a minute. Did we have other things we wanted to talk about? We might need to have you on for part 2.
Oh my God, yes, I would love that.
But before I let you go, one thing I want to ask you, I ask most of my guests is, knowing what you know now, throughout your career, what advice would you give younger Michelle?
Oh my God, that's such a good question. I think my biggest advice to myself would be to always trust myself. Even if you get it wrong, you're going to learn something from it. But to trust your, that intuition that we have inside of us. And yeah, that's going to take you exactly where you need to go.
Yeah. And that kind of goes to like what we were, saying earlier, like if you're talking to someone who's like more experienced and they're like, oh, maybe they're right. Well, maybe you need to trust yourself too.
Yeah, definitely. Because that trust builds confidence. Once you start, even if you get it wrong a few times, once you start getting it right, you're like, no, I'm right. And, you're not second guessing yourself. And I think that that's one of the things that I wish I would have learned a lot sooner to kind of trust myself.
I think that's good advice, but it also it's with time too. I mean,
Yeah,
I feel like you learn to trust yourself as you.
That happens as you get wiser and older.
Yeah, our old age.
What are you gonna do?
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for joining us. It was a pleasure to sit down and chat with you. And hopefully we can do it again, because I think we have plenty to discuss in part 2. But of course, for all our listeners out there, if you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to Claims Never Sleep. You can find us on your favorite streaming platform. You can also find us on YouTube. Thanks for tuning in.
This is the Claims Never Sleep podcast, presented by Cruiser Mitchell, with your host, Meghan Henry.